District, let the record show that a quorum of board members is present, that this meeting has been duly called, and that notice of this meeting has been posted in accordance with Texas Open Meetings Act, Texas Government Code, Chapter 551. Today's date is September 15. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. For attendance issues, let the record reflect Darrell Owens is present, Andrew Bisco is present, Felicia Moody is present, Michael Strange is present, John Clark is present, Leslie Carruthers is absent. Next, we'll take up public comments on agenda items. Neither? Okay. We have no one signed up to speak on any agenda items, and we have no one signed up to speak on any non-agenda items. That moves us to item 5, correspondence. Mr. G.
We had one correspondence from Gravely Law Firm, and it was just a thank you for having, faith with them, to stick with them and through the lawsuit.
Let the record now reflect Ms. Carruthers is present, so we're all here. Thank you. Next is special district recognitions. Mr. G.
Okay.
We're waiting for this.
It's not showing on these two. Okay. So our Wildcat band, all three bands received straight ones, first division ratings at the UIL concert and sight reading evaluation, earning them the Sweepstakes Award. This is the symphonic band pictured here, the wind ensemble band, and then the concert band. So once again, very successful with the band program. Our academic UIL team was the district champions, and we, I believe, have 40 students that are going to the regional meet, UIL competition.
Oh.
And the UIL track team, we were the track champions for district, and then we have, I believe, I want to say the wrong number, but I think we have around 16, 20 kids going to the regional track meet out of the area, advancing out of the area track meet. Our girls team should win the regional meet. I'm going to say that with a lot of confidence in them. So we look very forward to having some state competitors out of our track program. And Lady Cat softball were the district champions, and they began their playoff run. The Winter Guard was first place at the NTCA Regional A. Is that it? Okay. So a lot of continued success with the spring sports, and look forward to, like I said, having some more state competitors to finish out the school year. Our PAW awards from Kennedale High School, we have Allison Booble with 2, Candy Allstott with 2, Carly Epstein with 3, Charles Creasy with 3, Charlie Hammonds, Christy Butler, Claire Watson, Don Ramirez, Dee Dee Grimes with 2, Takesha Browning with 2, Doug Groff, Heath Wakeland with 2, and Jared Smith, John Bowles, Caitlin Shropshire, Kelly Carl, Kelly Kidd, Kim Hunt, Matt Munson with 2, Patty Bostad with 3, Paul Trantham, Stephanie Zena, and Tracy Hadaway, Tracy Spinks, Wendy Hale, Wendy Thacker with 3. So a lot of people at the high school getting recognition from their peers and parents, students. Kennedale Junior High, we had Christopher Hill, Lindsay Hammonds, Lisa Latimer, Margaret Owens, Joanne Steer Howard. At Arthur Intermediate, Donna Howard, Elizabeth Biter, Christy Merle, and Leanne Vaughn. And then at Delaney Elementary, we had Ashley Abear, Ashley Arbor had 2, Bonnie Kraft, Denise Mikasich, Jennifer Hawkins, Jessica Hawkins had 2, Jonathan Hanna, Kim Milne, Rebecca Hannon had 2, Sinead Paul had 2, and at Patterson, we had Alicia Cunningham with 2, Andrea Tankersley, April Winders, Brittany French, Brittany Owens, Connie Dorosky, Deborah Hicks, Gerald Hyde, Crystal Rice, Mariella Troche, and Priscilla Hightower, and Rosemary Reeves. And in Central Office, Dr. Ashley Spencer, Brandy King, Dr. Latoya Keys, Eileen Mode, Aaron Martin, Stephanie Lee, and Tracy Williams. And a round of applause for all the efforts for everyone on that list. The Paul Awards are, like I said, peer recognition and recognition from parents in a lot of cases and from students as well. So we appreciate all the hard work of the people who are on that list. Okay. I'll turn it back to you.
Right. Next item on our agenda is the consent agenda. That all items on the consent agenda will be entertained with a single motion unless a board member requests to remove an item. Does any board member request to remove any items from the consent agenda?
Nope.
Chair hearing none, and I will entertain a motion with regard to the consent agenda.
Make a motion to approve all items under the consent agenda as presented.
A motion by Mr. Strange. A second by Ms. Moody.
Carruthers.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought, Ms. Carruthers, I'm not listening. My apologies, Leslie. Any further discussion with regard to these items? If not, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? The chair hearing none, that motion passes unanimously. We now move to item 8. And this information has to do with board members, annual reporting requirements for continuing education. And because the legislature loves school board members so much, we're required to read a long script of information. So you can take a nap while I read all this. I apologize, but this is what the legislature requires. Under State Board of Education rule, completing required continuing education each year of service is a basic obligation and expectation of any sitting board member. As board president, I'm required to announce the name of each member who has completed the required continuing education, has exceeded the required continuing education, is deficient in meeting the required continuing education. The requirements for training are measured as of the first anniversary of the date of the trustee's election or appointment, or 2-year anniversary of his or her previous training as applicable. There are 7 training level areas for board members' continued education: local district orientation, orientation to the Texas Education Code, post-legislative update to the Texas Education Code, team building, additional continuing education, evaluating student academic performance and setting goals, identifying and reporting abuse, trafficking, and other maltreatment of children. To the extent applicable to each board member, I will announce the completion or deficiency as to required training. For members who still have time remaining to complete required training, I will announce those board members who have scheduled timely training and those who have not yet scheduled the training. At the conclusion of this announcement, I will announce any board members' training in excess of the continuing education requirements. First, local district orientation. The following first-year board members will complete local district orientation on May 11, 2020. Felicia Moody, Darrell Owens. Orientation to the Texas Education Code. The following first-year board members have completed Introduction to Texas Education Code training. Felicia Moody, Darrell Owens. Post-legislative update to Texas Education Code. The following board members completed the post-legislative updates to TEC. Andrew Biscoe, Leslie Carruthers, John Clark, and Michael Strange. And for those who don't know, the first-year board members haven't had a chance to do it, so there's no default or deficiency. Team building. The following board members have completed the annual team building training. Andrew Biscoe, Leslie Carruthers, John Clark, and Michael Strange. And the same statement I'll make that first-year or newly elected trustees haven't had a chance to complete that yet. Additional continuing education. The following board members have completed their additional continuing education requirements. Andrew Biscoe, Leslie Carruthers, John Clark, and Michael Strange. Evaluating student academic performance and setting goals. The following board members have completed the biennial training on evaluating student academic performance and setting goals. Andrew Biscoe, Leslie Carruthers, John Clark, Michael Strange. Identifying and reporting abuse, trafficking, and other maltreatment of children. The following board members have completed the biennial training on identifying and reporting abuse and trafficking. Andrew Biscoe, Leslie Carruthers, and John Clark. And since Mr. Strange is not going to be on the board after this, he's not required to do any more on that. Exceeding hours for continuing education for credit period reporting. The following board members have exceeded the amount of continuing education required annually. Andrew Bisco exceeded by 10.75 hours. Leslie Carruthers exceeded by 3.25 hours. Michael Strange exceeded by 12.5 hours. John Clark exceeded by 24.5 hours. Darrell Owens and Felicia Moody are not required to have completed the above-mentioned evaluating, improving student outcomes, post-legislative update to TEC, child abuse prevention, team building, and continuing education hours because their anniversary date of being elected is November 2021. And then beyond that, Tracy's putting together a calendar for tracking. You'll be able to see it, that'll keep track for us, help us stay on top and make sure we meet all requirements. And I think we want to make sure you knew that Andrew, Ms. Moody, Mr. Owens, and the soon-to-be new elected board members will complete that local district orientation on May 11th after the election. Any questions about any of that? Everybody okay with that? All right. Apologize for having to go through all that. Now we have HB3, that's mine, CCMR, we already did that. 9, business items requiring action.
Nope, still.
Did I miss one?
Yep.
I'm sorry, the HB3 CCMR update.
Good evening.
Right?
You guys have a copy of this update in your folder and linked in your board agenda. So in December this year, the House Bill 3 goals were adopted. And in February, the TAPER report was reviewed during the required public hearing session, in addition to the House Bill 3 early childhood literacy and math goals progress update. Tonight, we're going to review the CCMR goal. Part of the House Bill 3 requirement is to include goals and progress measures for student growth and CCMR indicators. Now, you guys are all well versed in CCMR indicators. I provided an overview here of those indicators for your reference.
Oh, I was talking to Brian, really telling you to turn up the mic a little bit.
The adopted CCMR board goal outcome for December is the percentage of graduates that meet criteria for CCMR will increase from 69% to 74% by August 2024. As you know, the data used in CCMR lags by 1 year. Therefore, the data for the 2020 accountability is from our 2018-2019 graduates. It's always nice to share good news. This year's target goal was 70%, and it was exceeded with a report of 73% CCMR graduates for 2020 accountability. Going into our goal progress measures, we have elected to measure progress in all 3 areas of career readiness, college readiness, and military readiness. And our first one addresses career readiness. It's a percentage of students who earn an industry-based certification will increase from 7% to 39% by 2024. The yearly target goal was exceeded for 2020 is 15.2% met career readiness with completion of an IBC. So we are on track to achieve the 39% by 2024. The second progress measure is addressing college readiness. Graduates meeting TSI criteria will increase from 49% to 71%. The yearly target goal of 54% for 2020 was not met, as 35% was reported for meeting TSI criteria. So then you'll see next, in response to this data piece, an opportunity for growth was definitely identified. And we created a timeline of things that we have inputted even prior to this data set to address.
Change your mic.
I'm so sorry.
It won't work. Technology is our friend.
It's good? Can you hear me? Yes.
Good.
So since then, KHS is a TSI testing center. They offer SAT school day, free test prep during the summer and in school. We are offering college prep courses, being more intentional with our data and our student placement. and also hopefully partnering with a College Bridge online platform for college prep courses through UTA. Our final progress measure goal is military readiness. CCMR criteria will increase from 0% to 10% by August 2024. Our yearly target goal was met and exceeded with 4.9% reported enrollment into military. So military, the way to achieve a military point is actual enlistment into the U.S. Armed Forces, which is actually not going to count in accountability currently because of discrepancies in how they were attaining those numbers. So that's been removed from CCMR. However, we thought since it's still part of CCMR, it was important to monitor and progress the success for ASVAB and readiness, as SAT and ACT predict readiness in college, IABCs predict readiness in career fields, ASVAB potentially predicting readiness for military enlistment. It's also currently in the legislative session for CCMR, for the military piece to be put back into CCMR based on readiness scores from the ASVAB. So we have left that there. We also included a readiness goal marker. So underneath the years, you'll see that 54% is where we started with 2020, 54% students successful in readiness ASVAB scores. And so we have mapped out a 5-year plan for those as well. Another reference point for CCMR indicators. And then CCMR student opportunities within KISD. So it's really just a snapshot of all the things that we offer. Some new programs, some programs to prepare our students to earn their points for post-secondary readiness. Such things as we have 15 AP course offerings. We offer 24 hours in dual credit through TCC. We have now additional dual credit courses through our CTE program with welding and automotive, which offer a level 1 certificate. Welding was new to us this year. Automotive will be new to us next year. We have also an addition of UT on-ramps courses this school year with college algebra and physics, and next year we'll add 2 more courses with chemistry and geoscience. We have now some courses at the junior high that get students interested to be able to explore college and career opportunities prior to getting into high school. And we also, in addition, have, of course, the SAT School Day, TSI Testing Center at the high school, and then our college prep courses next year. Do you have any questions?
Any questions? This is just informational, but if you have any questions.
What was the window for, like, I saw on the, sorry, I had it. The military readiness, 1.3, what's the window of, like, once they graduate, how long do we get to keep tracking until they actually, like, let's say they don't enlist right after graduation, what's the?
So that's part of the discrepancy with with data reporting. Schools, so it varied. Schools were reporting based on intent to enlist, or if they just set for the ASVAB. We utilized a senior survey and then actually talking to recruiters and getting that information from them. So that is how we reported in PEAMS. Therefore, that's how they are scoring it here. TA thought that they were going to get the information from the Department of Defense.
Right, that's what,
That did
sounds
not
more like a
happen.
self-reporting from some districts than
Right.
an actual. Gotcha.
So points went really high for military
Gotcha.
for some schools, and so
I'm with you.
so that's how we reported it.
Any other questions? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Now we move to item 9, which is business items requiring action. 9A will be discuss and consider approval of camera system at KHS and KJHS.
Mr. Hogan will come down. I believe he gave you a sheet in your book detailing, and he will be available for any questions that you have.
And let's please be mindful, this is a security measure, so let's don't,
If there are any questions that would require that we go into closed session,
Just
we
let
would
me
be
know.
mindful of that.
You said there's a sheet in our folder?
Yeah, it's part
Thought
of
they
your,
had one sheet or one pager.
yeah, it's part of your,
I'm sorry, in our board agenda or in this
Yeah.
folder here? I thought you
in the
said-
board agenda.
Oh, gotcha, thank you.
you told him.
I'm with you.
Yeah?
Well, first, if you had a chance to take a look at the agenda item, if you had any questions to begin with, but as you had already talked about, this is a safety-sensitive topic. I can tell you some general ideas and specifics, but obviously if you have any specific question, then
I assume these are connected to the key fobs and stuff, all that's,
yes, sir. This
Together.
new system, both campuses that we're proposing this for, it would actually integrate with what we've already purchased from the same manufacturer and the same vendor, and use the same platform, the Easy Station platform that we currently are using.
just expanding to
Yes,
other
sir.
places now.
Yes, sir.
And again, I'm not opposed, if any board member wants real specific detail, we can certainly step back into executive session if you have any questions.
No.
It's an important issue, we'll
Yeah.
make sure we're all comfortable with it.
So I'm curious, will this purchase require us to junk any of our current equipment?
Yes, sir, it would. However, we are able to integrate some of the better equipment that we would still have left afterward. Specific facilities, we can then integrate with the new system. There's a capability for them to take systems from one facility and join it with the newer stuff until we're ready to upgrade, other buildings. This proposal is specifically for the high school main building and the junior high main building. So we're gonna, the goal is to salvage and also integrate the other buildings as we need to.
And ball fields also.
Yes, sir. This actually would include a wide-angle camera with multiple views for the football field, the softball field, and the baseball field, which we currently don't have. This also would include cameras for the small field house as well.
And the intention would be that repurposing cameras from those facilities at other campuses, so.
So they would just be repurposed, they would not be discarded.
No, they'd be repurposed. The ones that are salvageable, yeah.
Right, we're talking a wide, there's a difference obviously in technology. Let's put it that way. So some can and some can't. The ones that can, we will definitely repurpose.
Did we check any other bidders with this, or just because we were using this for the overall, that we did the upgrade last year? Is it just better to integrate with them, in your opinion?
It is. Right, and that was the intent of using this specific vendor if we were happy and felt confident with the product that they had installed.
Okay.
Because the previous platform, it's not fully functional.
Okay.
So what we didn't want to do is bring in yet another platform.
Piece in,
And now we
pieces
have three
together.
different platforms that we're trying to simultaneously use,
Okay.
and it gets cumbersome in terms for investigative purposes.
And this one will be able to, you'll be able to use it for your maintenance and things like that? If you need different cameras or any cameras have problems of malfunctions, you'll still be using the Michaels?
Yes, sir. Yes,
Okay.
sir. The camera, everything under warranty, obviously. And,
Okay.
so anything that has broken at this point, they've come out and repaired at no cost to us.
Sounds good. Thanks, sir.
Any other questions? I don't see any, then I will entertain a motion with regard to approving the new camera system for the high school and junior high school as presented.
Make a motion to approve the new camera system for the high school and junior high school as presented.
Motion by Mr. Owens.
Second.
No, it's the second by Mrs. Mooney, I'll get that one right. Any further discussion on this item? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Chair hearing none, that motion passes unanimously.
Thanks, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Hogan.
Thank you, Ms. Hogan. Having passed a motion to Add cameras, now we gotta talk about how we pay for it. Mr. Adams, are you presenting, or who's presenting on this one?
It's just the budget amendment to it, so,
Does anyone need any presentation on this, or do you think we can handle the budget and take care of
I
it?
mean, it's just the standard budget amendment, so, and Mr. Adams, ask if you got questions.
Any questions? We see none. And the chair will entertain a motion with regard to the budget amendment.
Mr. Adams, you'll be on the next one too, so.
I will also make a motion to approve the budget amendment for updating the camera system at the high school and junior high school.
Motion by Mr. Owens. A second by Ms. Carruthers. Any other further discussion on this item? Chair hearing none. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Chair hears none. That motion passes unanimously. Now we move to item 9C, discuss and consider an offer to purchase struck off for taxes. And we can go into an executive session about this item. If you will recall, we have talked about this property before. It's kind of like the second round of it, I think.
I was wondering, I was like, is this the same place?
That's what happens when you have offers and they don't go through or something.
Gotcha.
But, who's presenting on this one, Mr. G?
Mr. Adams.
Mr. Adams.
Like Mr. Strange was mentioning, we had an offer several months ago from a firm not in the area. That one, they never reacted to it. I received another letter in the mail wanting to buy it. Sent it on to the tax attorneys. They didn't want to proceed forward. This offer we have tonight is from a local individual. I talked to him, referred him to the tax attorneys. That's how we're at the point we're at right now. I believe his proposal's for $28,000 and there's only like 10,000 property taxes owed against it, so.
Did he say what he wanted to do with it?
He wants to build a house on it, is what he said to me. Of course, it's right there by the railroad tracks, so.
And isn't it a house already on that? Or-
Right beside it.
It's
Or
adjacent.
Beside it, I don't think it's actually on.
Okay, so that property is
It's a very
A little
narrow.
to the north, right against the railroad tracks, I think. Like northwest, northeast. If sold,
I
it's,
feel very comfortable that this one's probably gonna proceed through.
and it would satisfy the tax owed to the district plus all interest,
Yes, sir.
and other taxing authorities,
Yes, sir.
tax and interest.
There'll actually be some surplus there that the county clerk will hold in trust for a year. And if nobody claims it, apparently we have to file a lawsuit. The judge makes us do that. Usually, after a year, it just reverts to the
Back to the original.
taxing entities that were owed the taxes on a pro rata basis, whatever was left over.
Any further questions?
Can you remind me what that property is zoned for? Is it residential?
I have no idea.
I'm pretty
There's
sure
houses
that
all
one's
around it.
residential.
It should be,
I think,
it should be residential, but it could have a commercial, I mean, it could, because they, once upon a time, the city talked about doing something along the railroad track with a rail stop, but I don't know if they changed the zoning or not, that was a discussion. You got the park across the street, housing on the other side. I don't think you can stick much commercial in that place, because it's not deep enough, not wide enough.
Was this offer similar to the offers in the past? I can't remember. I remember it was a low offer, but
This is lower.
This
This is
is
lower?
lower than the first one, it's a little more than the second one.
gotcha.
Actually, more than the first one, less
No,
than
it's
the
less than the first
second
one.
one.
The first one was 50.
12,000, I think, the first one.
Yeah, I remember it was low.
Mr. Lewis came out and kind of talked about what happens, again, we only get a taxing issue money that's owed. And if you've got a lot more money, it should go back to whoever's the record title holder, but they have to file suit and do things to get it, so. It doesn't hurt the district. It's not like we are selling our property for, have to make fair market value for it.
And I think it was on the tax roll for 60-something thousand.
66 current value.
But it jumped up. It wasn't that high. All of a sudden, it jumped up within a year. It was like $12,000 and it jumped up to 60, which is remarkable.
Which
Blame it on COVID.
means it'll go back onto the tax roll and he would be assessed the taxes on that. Of course, it's subject to protest, but.
So what's our responsibility here? Because I would just say, looking at it just at face value, I am not in favor of giving someone that much of a discount. But as you said, it seems like it's not really, we're just in charge of the taxes that are owed onto that property.
As I understand it, we don't officially, quote, own it like you would if the district acquired land or
Right.
had land. In a situation where the district owns the land, we are required to try to get fair market value for it. We are basically a trustee of this property for the tax debt.
That has not been paid, right?
And so Mr. Lewis explained to me, we don't have to get fair market value for it. We need to make sure that we at least cover our debt or other tax entities' debts as well. So you have 3 other entities involved in this agreement also. They have to be a part of it as well. City, hospital district, and I think
Tarrant County.
Tarrant
Tarrant
County
County, yeah. I
School
see that.
District, College District.
TCC may have been.
TCC should be,
I think they kind of lumped it with Tarrant County.
So if it goes through, I'm reading this here, then that's 15,000 roughly that comes back to us.
No, because the
Says
total
amount
taxes
realized-
owed against it is like 9,000, of which.
Well, it says here, amount realized if bid is accepted, $15,846.
That should be the difference between offer price and the taxes that are owed against it.
Gotcha,
And that's what goes into escrow at the county clerk's office.
for a year.
I think, yeah, the post-judgment total assessment, again, it changes as they wait.
Mhm.
I think your number for Kennedale is
The bottom, okay.
$7,049, yeah.
Gotcha. That's the back taxes.
But we could potentially, as a district, I think that's last is saying, we could potentially share proportionally that 3rd column on the top set of graphs.
Mhm.
If it went a year, no one claimed it, and the taxing entities filed suit and had the judge release it, we could receive a proportion amount based upon the tax that we were owed as to the total tax.
Gotcha.
And when I was in Hillsborough, all of a sudden I started getting these checks from the county clerk's office. I'm going, what is this? What it was stuff that had sold at, or not sold at a tax sale, but people had bought, and the year had gone by and they started distributing the excess
That
funds.
had been unheld, gotcha.
Apparently Hill County, you didn't have to file a lawsuit, the judge just decided.
Let them have
And
it.
that is kind of unique to Tarrant County. This one judge apparently, because all the tax suits go into one court, this one judge, for whatever reason, statute, and Mr. Lewis confirmed it, the statute doesn't require it, he does.
Hmm.
So they actually have to incur a fee to pay a lawsuit, serve the record landowner, they get to answer, it's trying to bring the record landowner in, I think he's trying to do.
Yeah.
I mean, we haven't collected any taxes on this property.
Yeah, since '05, or
Since
90,
05.
97, actually.
You can get it back on the tax roll, and
Right.
the new owner makes his property taxes, will get the money. It's not an astronomical amount of money, but
Yeah.
Anything else, Michael?
No, I think that was clarifying just the difference between what we talked about in the past to this. If it's just taxes, I mean, we're not getting it otherwise, might as well start
I'm
claiming.
like you, I think we have to be really strict and safe with our property.
Mhm.
Right.
We're not, it's not our property, we're a trustee with
Yeah.
other entities.
Yeah.
Anything else?
That was my only concern, was it, if it was our property and the value was at 66,000, and we're not getting that, but if it's not our property, we're just collecting tax on it, yeah.
I mean, we could buy it if you wanted to, Michael.
No,
Not next to the railroad track. Put it next to a lake and maybe we'll talk.
Doesn't seem like any other discussion on that item, then I'll entertain a motion with regard to item 9C.
I'll make a motion to accept the offer as presented to purchase the property at 229 South New Hope Road that has been struck off for taxes.
A motion by Mr. Bisco,
Second.
second by Mr. Strange. Is there further discussion? Chair hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The chair hears none. That motion passes unanimously. Thank you, Mr. Adams. We now move to item 9D, discuss, consider approval of the instructional materials allotment and 2021-2022 TEKS certification form. Welcome, Dr. Vu.
Good evening. So I have two items. They go together in many ways. Every year, Texas school districts are required to certify that their IMA funds from the instructional materials allotment are used in accordance with Texas Education Code and meet performance standards for college readiness. The form has been updated this year, so if you sat on the board before or you're familiar with these forms, in the past it listed all the grade levels and you checked next to each grade level certifying that the materials that were being used were aligned with our state standards, and you move to the next proclamation. This year, the form that you have, it actually goes by grade level, and it lists the different instructional materials that have been approved by the board and purchased for the past several years, and so that's the biggest difference with the form. So it is going to look new to you, but these are all the material purchases that have been approved previously from the board. And so in this particular case, you certify the TEKS certification form, and that allows us to make the purchase this year for Proclamation 2021, which I will be presenting shortly.
Were there any additions or adjustments since COVID that we had, before this was done? Now we've had COVID and we see ourselves with instructional materials that are now, maybe we hadn't tried out in the past, but now are beneficial. And I guess specifically, like, one thing I don't see on here is any adaptive software.
So we have used title funds to purchase some adaptive software for our different grade levels, but that hasn't been something that we've used our instructional materials allotment for. Now, many of the materials that we have purchased do have different components that may be, come
Within
along
it.
with the textbook. And those would be listed here, but there's nothing there that specifies the specific digital components of each piece.
Okay. So I know one thing we talked about, gosh, I don't know, seems like a year ago now, or maybe it was last May when we were in the thick of COVID and just talking about some of the programs that we didn't realize were beneficial, and now we're realizing that are extremely beneficial. But when you talk about software license and stuff, that's just not something that you have set aside in your budget. So it's like, as you start to think about the next year, like what things were really beneficial that you want to kind of set aside money for to make sure that you can keep those for the kids.
Yeah, sure,
But that makes sense in what you're saying. You're just allocating that with the different
absolutely.
funding.
And we're supplementing our core resources,
Right.
which the board has already approved and we purchased previously.
Right. This is more for tier one.
Yes.
Yep.
Any additional questions, concerns? This requires, I believe, action by the board, make sure.
Yeah, it's on the sheet.
Yep.
Just a motion to approve that.
Make a motion to recommend the approval of instructional materials allotted and the 2021-2022 TEKS certification form as presented.
Motion by Mr. Strange. Ms. Carruthers beat you to that one. Second by Ms. Carruthers. Any further discussion on this item? Chair hears none. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Chair hears none. That motion passes unanimously. And the second piece, pre-K instructional materials adoption.
So this is what you've all been waiting for.
Yes.
Proclamation 2021. Just some background information. Each year, proclamation specifies a specific age group or content area to adopt instructional materials for. In this particular year, in 2021, it is the adoption of pre-kindergarten systems. The district followed the instructional materials adoption process, which included input from the Proclamation 2021 Adoption Committee. You'll see in the following slides who was involved in that committee. The committee met multiple times during the fall and spring to review the state-adopted pre-K guidelines, align instructional materials, and develop a recommendation for this adoption. I bring that recommendation here to you this evening. These materials, once adopted, will be implemented at the beginning of next fall, which is the beginning of the 2021-2022 school year. So on the next slide, you will see that we involved all of our pre-K teachers, our people who are in the classrooms working with our students. We also involved our district specialist, a district administrator, and a campus administrator as well. I provided the adoption timeline here for you just to give you an idea of the steps that were taken. The committee was formed. They reviewed the Texas pre-kindergarten guidelines. We looked at the rubric. The state has done a really nice job of providing a rubric and some specificity this year that they haven't provided in previous adoptions, which was nice. The committee viewed virtual sample materials. The virtual materials were actually linked out and provided to the community via the parent newsletter so that parents could provide feedback and they could look at those materials as well. The committee rated the materials based on the rubric, and I'm bringing to you their recommendation. In terms of the process and the focus, TEA supports high-quality pre-kindergarten that is developmentally appropriate, multisensory, and experiential. That is something that we have talked about with this group before. When reviewing the materials, those are things that they were looking for. They were looking for more than a stack of worksheets, a textbook. They were looking for things that the kids could touch and play with, some sensory activities, and this particular resource includes all of those things as well as digital resources that are family-facing, meaning digital resources that can support families at home to provide additional hands-on experiences for their children. I provided elements of the rubric here for you just to view so that you can see the different aspects that were evaluated. These are also aligned with the state pre-kindergarten high-quality guidelines. We selected materials that were on the state list, so they've already been certified to meet all of the standards for the state. The committee narrowed it down to 2, which is Pre-K On My Way from Scholastic and the Creative Curriculum from Teaching Strategies. And so you can see here how these 2 different resources scored according to the rubric. And the committee has determined that they would like to recommend the Creative Curriculum. The Creative Curriculum provides academic rigor as well as a social emotional learning component, which we know is so important for those youngest, our youngest learners. It also includes hands-on investigation of familiar, meaningful, interesting topics. So one thing I really like is it comes with a bundle. There's a bucket with sand. They can learn how to draw their letters with shaving cream, things other than sitting and writing on worksheets, which whenever you look at pre-K materials, a lot of times they are very heavily focused on that kind of work, and so we want to engage all of the senses and make sure that our kids are really having the opportunity to engage in that multimodal sensory experience. And as I mentioned, it also includes the digital resources to support the communication between families and their teachers, and also provide additional practice and just academic work that they can do at home. So on the following slide, it just gives a brief list of all the different things that are included. One thing that I love about this is it comes with classroom libraries. So it comes with big books where the teachers can do an interactive read aloud. It also comes with books. One thing that's so important for our youngest learners is that they develop just print awareness. So they understand that you hold a book and you turn the pages like this. They understand what letters look like, even if they aren't yet in the place where they can read them. They can recognize that it's upside down, those kinds of things. And so this particular resource comes with libraries where our kids can actually touch the books, but then they can also get that modeling from the teacher, which is a really nice option that not all of the materials that were reviewed had. Each of the teaching guides are centered around 4 to 6 week units, thematic units that focus on hands-on experiential sensory activities. And so I've just included a little bit. They have boxes, gardening, simple machines, water wheels, music making, and transitioning to kindergarten. And so these are some of the units that are included, which is nice. I've included more about the teacher resources, which includes some bilingual resources as well. One thing that's really nice is 90 minutes, they have short songs, chants, games, so things so that the kids can learn to transition. They're able to develop routines, rituals and routines that really help them be successful in pre-kindergarten and beyond. It also comes with an assessment. So you've heard us talk a lot about MAP, and we've talked about how we're going to do progress monitoring using MAP. So the GOLD assessment, it's something that teachers can used to assess our pre-kindergarten students, but it's in-the-moment assessment, so they don't have to actually stop and carve out time to assess. They can do it as the students are working, which is nice because protecting instructional time is so important for all of our students. And it's also on the commissioner's list of approved pre-kindergarten assessments, which we have to report out, so we don't have to give this assessment and also another one. So that's nice as well. And then I've included a list of the resources that are provided for families. So this particular purchase would come out of our IMA allotment, which is we get every 2 years. So once we certify the TEAC certification form, which you just did, we send this in and we're able to purchase this. What questions do you have?
I do. With the bilingual, I know it's not a large population that we have, but do you foresee that we'll have to supplement this? So we need to budget now for bilingual books?
Our bilingual population is absolutely growing, and we've seen that every year when we're looking at our demographics. One of the strong features of this particular resource is its bilingual component. One great thing about IMA, though, the way that it works is as we get in there, if we see that we need additional materials for bilingual, we could. And we have that money set aside already. We also can use Title III for that as well, just depending on what it is to be used for. So at this time, we are projecting that our bilingual population will continue to grow, but this particular resource will meet the needs of our students that we have in classrooms right now.
Additional questions?
Can I ask a question about the gold assessment?
Sure.
Okay, so is this the only level assessment that comes with, or that's available? And
With this particular resource?
Yes.
Yes, with this particular resource. So there are in-the-moment progress checks, some formative assessments, just some teacher tools that they can use that you look, part of the teaching. So give me a thumbs up. If we're working on this, give me a thumbs up so they can do a quick monitoring. But in terms of a formalized assessment, including this resource, this is it.
And the reason I asked because I was wondering if there's going to be the possibility of maybe high achieving students or youngsters that might go for a different assessment that we may have to allocate additional resources in order to reach that.
So this assessment, it is adaptive, so it would go up. It doesn't list the exact grade level here, but it should be able to capture the learning of our pre-kindergarten students. But we also have math that goes all the way up to post-secondary. So if it were the case, we had a student who needed, we wanted to make sure that we were meeting the needs of that particular student, that student could use math growth, which is what we're using with our older learners. So no additional resources needed, I guess, to answer your question.
Were you thinking we did need, were you looking for a different assessment?
No, I just want to make sure that, if there is a
Sheldon,
example, we want to be, I'm sure we want to be able to serve, our young learners at all levels.
And we also have running records, we have TPRI, we have DRA, we have things that our teachers have been using for years that if there's a specific need or a teacher's looking at a specific area, reading fluency, for example, we have those already available. It's not included in this particular kit, but it's something our teachers are trained on and have been using for several years.
And, I guess my point would be, how does we feel like this supports our programs that we have in our kinder through fourth grade, right now, currently? And you kind of touched on some of that, so will you kind of explain how this supports that?
Well, the really important part is that we must, as a district, choose an assessment that's on the commissioner's list, because we have to report out on it. And if we choose a resource that does not include that, that would be an additional purchase for us. So that's one appealing aspect of this. In terms of assessment, we could have a retreat on assessment. But the most important piece is that the students are receiving feedback and they're able to learn and grow. So you learn through the struggle, right? So you try something and you get feedback on it and it's a little bit hard. And so you try again and get more feedback. And it's that action and reflection on action that allows us to grow and to learn. And it's so important for teachers to have that as well. Because if you have a room full of kids and they're doing things, but you're not continually monitoring that and helping them, you can think about, learning to play golf and you're swinging a golf club. Sometimes it's just put your elbow out or, do those kind of things. That's the same way that teachers use assessments in the classrooms. So that kind of ongoing assessment, reflection, action. That is something that all of our teachers are working on, and this absolutely fits in with that. In addition to the mandatory reporting that's required from the commissioner's list.
And if I recall, last year you discussed the desire to do a better job of identifying GT students at all grade levels, and we started looking at, were we going down to pre-K under that kind of general plan? Was that something you were already looking at doing?
That's something that you can do. A lot of times at that age, it's really important to just get the kids, the social emotional piece is really, is a vital aspect at that age level, but then also just getting them all involved. The more time that you carve out for testing, the less time that you have to use for learning. And so we do want to limit our assessments as much as possible and make sure that we're getting meaningful data from them.
So we use CLI Engage as one, or,
Yeah, we've used that for kindergarten as well. Mhm.
so that goes along with the assessments that you were talking about, Mr. Owens?
Okay, I didn't do that.
It's a CLI Engage, and we can expound on it, but it's an assessment that you were speaking of, so that it's a more formal way to monitor what the pre-K students are gonna learn. So it'll align with math, the parents will be able to understand it, it's a pretty easy report card. Even though they're pre-K, they still get evaluated.
Yeah, so there's a list for pre-K and kindergarten of approved assessments, the commissioner's list of assessments. So CLI Engage is one of them, TPRI is one of them. And so some of the assessments are different depending on the grade level being assessed. And the gold assessment is not something that's been used in Kennedale before, but it is on the commissioner's list. And what's neat about it is the way that it is embedded in the units that the students are already engaged in. So that where I was pointing out that they wouldn't have to stop and assess the way that in some cases they're having to do now.
Additional questions? Then, thank you, Dr. Vu. I'll entertain a motion with regard to.
Hold on, just 1 second, quick question before you do the motion. On the motion, we've got beginning in 2022 through 2023, is that correct? Or is it 2021, at the last page?
2020, it's 2021, 2022.
Yeah, it's 21, 22.
Okay, I think you got that on your last
Yeah,
page.
that's a typo in the PowerPoint.
As a QA, I have
I can
to look on
update
those
that, yeah,
things.
thank you.
Whoever makes the motion, make sure it says beginning 2021.
It's 2021,
And
2022.
I will touch on that. We have, pre-K is up for adoption this year, so our allotment is for pre-K for this year. And because of that, we have chosen to, even though we had the waiver for pre-K to put it out another year, we are going to offer full-day pre-K to qualifiers next year. So
Very exciting opportunity for
we're
our students.
very excited about the opportunity to do that, and it ties in with the adoption of the curriculum. So.
I
And
believe-
if the teachers want it and this is what they want to use, then
I am bringing their recommendation to you.
Hey, I say we don't listen to our teachers. Sometimes.
it's
Sounds
in
good.
the past.
Any other questions? Then I will entertain a motion.
I make a motion to approve the creative curriculum by teaching strategies for the cycle beginning in the 2021-2022 school year.
A motion by Mrs. Carruthers,
Second.
second by Mrs. Moody. Any further discussion? Chair hearing none. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? The chair hears none. That motion passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good luck with the new ones. We now move to item 9F, discuss and consider approval of policy revisions. And just so you're aware, I mean, I think there were a number of revisions, but we're starting with the board policy pieces. There may be other policy pieces, so trying to take it off in bites that we can chew on. So that's what these are being brought, I think, basically board issues. And it is not exclusive. This is what the group recommended after reviewing our policies. If there's a specific policy that you wanted to consider and it's not in this group, please speak up and we'll bring it around on another opportunity. Okay?
And there is one D that is about, I believe, transfer, looking at our transfer policy. if we want to look at revising that as well. Because if we're going to do it, we have registration starting, and we need to address that.
Well, let's go with the, I guess, has everyone had a chance to review the proposed policy revisions provided in the packet? I would like to have discussion on those if there is discussion desired.
Only one I had was the last one there, DC local. Making it, I think the proposed change was to give the superintendent authority over all contractual and non-contractual personnel.
And so let's hear the, I guess, the reasoning that was behind that in terms of what was presented in the policy review. Mr. G?
Yes, sorry, I'm trying to get to it here. So you said the last one?
Local, yes,
I
DC
have my
local.
glasses. I gotta take this off.
Here,
Can't see here.
here.
I ain't listening here.
Chad, it's right there if you want to see it.
Yeah, I'm just having a hard time seeing it. Okay, so I think it has come up several times that the board has considerations that they do not do the hiring, I do the hiring, and that has been brought up in open session many times. And this basically would sit there and not have the board having the hiring authority. I would have the hiring authority, but then the contracts that are approved still has to be approved by the board. So it just gives me, actually, it would give me the authority like I have during the summer to do it, but it'd be year round and it takes that off the board, which y'all have mentioned that you have not wanted. So that's kind of where we are with this, whether you want that authority or not, so.
And with regard to hiring and firing, sometimes we're getting reports after it's happened. I mean, it's brought to us as an informational.
Yeah, it's a lot of times it is
It's not,
informational,
it's
but-
not like we're picking the teacher or we're picking the administrator.
Right.
I get it. And I think this is consistent with what we've talked about in the past about, we look at it, but we're really not taking any action on it. I mean, and would we take action? I mean, is someone going to say that they're going to make a decision over the principal or teacher who's visited with a particular teacher and says, we like this one and recommend them for hiring? I don't feel I would be doing that, but maybe someone else feels like they would.
So for teachers and principals, yes, I agree. But for central office administrators and superintendents and assistant superintendents, I think the board should be consulted. That's my opinion.
Okay, we'll consult, but will we still make a decision on whether they were hired or not?
Yes. And then, I'm not saying that we're not gonna agree.
Right, well, I don't agree with that. I
That's
agree.
not, it's just, these are the qualifications, this is the person, or yes, you stand up. Welcome.
But are you gonna go to the interview, I mean, that means you go through the interview process and stuff, so you can't make a decision if you're not.
No, it means that he brings the recommendation to the board and we say yes or no. No, that he's the interviewer, an interviewee and his team.
So but you're talking about it at a fairly
I'm
high
talking
level.
about central office, and I'm not talking about principals or anything like that, or teachers, or,
Well, can we refine central office to be, are you talking about like assistant superintendents or director level? Is that the
Yes.
level you're talking?
yeah, coordinators. That's my,
So we might have to refine that to describe what that is.
okay.
Because, I mean, our structure isn't the same as other school districts, and I want to make sure that it works for us.
You are, well, the other school districts, well, one that I know particular has given the superintendent that responsibility.
Just giving it to them
They
directly.
took it from the board and gave it solely to the superintendent.
And I just have a problem, like I said, I don't know that I'm qualified.
That's
That
what
would
I'm
be my
thinking,
only
like-
concern. We look at all these things, I read every one we get a teacher coming in, I go through what they presented as far as their qualifications, I'm going, that's great, but I didn't meet them. I know a lot of people that look great on paper, but I wouldn't trust with my feet, so. How do we do that at a level when you're talking about an administrator or higher?
And since we're only meeting once a month, you would have to either call a special board meeting or wait till the next meeting to actually approve them. And if you're in the process of hiring someone, and that person has multiple job offers, we may not be able to get that person if we've got to wait till we're meeting.
Have we had to do that in the past? Have a special meeting to hire someone?
Well, we're not responsibility to hire.
We don't hire
To
them as a
approve, to
superintendent.
approve the hire.
I think we've approved them pretty much after the fact. I think is what they said, I recommend these people be hired, and they're like already in their contracts.
I guess that's my question, then what has changed here, if that would still hold true?
Is this saying that you're gonna continue doing what you're doing? It's just that
Sorry.
we're just writing the policy,
Right, are we now aligning the policy to what's
what we've
happening, or
been
is there
doing?
something changing?
Because you've
Basically,
always hired everybody and
Yes.
told us.
So the policy, like I said, this is from the policy audit with the policy review and where we came out, and this is a recommendation from our practices and what we've been doing to matching it up, so.
So this is what we've been doing,
Sure.
you're just putting it in the word.
I mean, if you look at the existing policy, it provides that we retain authority for employment of contractual personnel, shortening it, except from June to August, the superintendent has it.
Mhm.
And that's when most of our people are hired.
Correct.
So we're talking about someone who's
You
coming
don't
in.
lose them because he
Yeah.
has the authority.
I don't see this as being a dramatic variation from what we're doing, other than, to me, it makes it clear that we don't really have to go that process of, discussing each time. We're not doing anything. We appreciate the people. They look good. Thank you.
Is-
That's an informational presentation. That's not an action.
Right, so I guess that's my question, is if we vote to approve this, is the superintendent still bringing the people, like this is their qualifications, this is who we're hiring, or is this just now, they'll just hire without any information going to the board? I guess that's my wondering is, will information still be brought to the board, so at least they're in the loop as to, this is the new assistant superintendent, or this is the new director of so-and-so? Just so there's some, I guess it would seem like there still needs to be some level of accountability in that. If it's a good hire, great, but the superintendent should still be bringing that to the board to say, this is why this is a good hire. If I'm reading this here, it doesn't look like that exists anymore. And then I had one other thought, but I wanted to close the loop on this one first. I mean, is that still happening, or it's just hired and then you'll know about it after the fact?
I would read this to say that he makes the decision and would not be required to provide us. That's how I would read this policy recommendation as it was looked at by the group that's looking at it.
So we could be totally just no
We could-
idea.
We could be, but you could certainly, I'm not sure it's a good idea for the superintendent to be making a lot of the hires and not keeping us in the loop.
I was gonna say, I don't think that would be the
But that's a
case, so.
judgment call. I mean,
Yeah.
we're taking that judgment call out of our hands now if we approve it the way it's worded here.
If we make that policy.
If we make that policy.
Mhm.
So I am still processing how this changes the operation, the method of operation. During the summertime, it doesn't change. It's just, we're just talking about for those months that are not when we hire most of the people.
I get the line that's struck out now that no longer exists is in that second paragraph. The superintendent shall inform the board of any persons offered a contract under this authority. That's no longer there now. So that's what I was saying with Mr. Clark. I mean, yeah, I'm totally with you as far as we're not in the interview. They're not the person that we're gonna have to manage. So it should be the superintendent's hire, but now, the way it's worded, the superintendent does not have to involve the board in any discussion as to who's hired. Again, to Ms. Moody's point, talking about teachers and campus, that's on the campus principal, but those that are directly under the superintendent, those that work right under him in the same office. I don't know, seems like the board should be informed as to that. And I understand that there's a good faith that he would, but that's not what it says in the policy.
Are you saying you'd be more comfortable if we included that line back in, that he informs us? But either way, in the existing policy or the new one, we're not preventing him from hiring someone.
No.
So would that make you more I'm just trying to figure out a way to make the policy.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, I think if we wanted to just, on the board's end, to hold ourselves accountable, like we know who's being hired at that level. If we adopt it as is, we don't have to know.
So you're saying just, we're gonna do the blue, that, and then just add the sentence, the superintendent shall inform the board of any person offered a contract under this
Yeah,
authority. And
offered
take off-
or hired, I guess, he's already
Take
off.
off that, I mean, add that part.
I say yes.
So, but two different things. You said offered or hired.
Well, I'm saying right now it just says offered, but
Right.
as to what you're saying, he could have already hired, he didn't have to wait on us, so I would say offered / hired, if he's
Okay.
already hired him, right?
So, okay, so let's
Yep.
circle back. We gotta do these in motions, I think.
Sure.
So the last line of the second red paragraph,
Right. But adding
just
the
add
word,
it back in.
adding it back in, we said offered or hired. So again, you know.
Offered a contract or hired
Right, okay.
under his authority. Mhm.
Are you getting that, Tracy?
Can I say something? So I would still, every month, be providing you the same information, informationally. It'll still have the same layout. It just won't have the motion at the bottom. And as far as the verbiage in the policy, anyone that starts after the first day of school technically is not allowed to have a contract. They get a letter of intent to hire. So it's kind of a moot point that it even comes to the board as a contract, because technically if they're not working the full contract period, they get a letter of intent to hire. So they're not even, somebody that's even hired September 1 technically doesn't even get a contract for the remainder of the year. So, and everyone that typically is hired, you're right, they come in, they sign their paperwork, it could be 3 weeks before there's a board meeting and they've already started.
Right.
I provide them a letter that says, this is your, we intend to hire you. Your name will be presented to the board on X date, and that's how they're informed. But typically, when it's mid-year like that, we need to get them in, it's more important than the summer.
With that codification, are we maybe thinking about adding that the board will be provided with information on new hires and resignations, just a statement? Like we've been getting?
Well, new hires right now, it's just the names, isn't it? We're not-
No, well, new hires, we get a packet with their application,
Sure.
and we don't, there's background information. I mean,
Resume.
I think it'd still be good that we're asking the superintendent from his or her mouth, hey, here's who I've hired, here's why I like them. They come from this district, you know, some level of justification, if it's a direct hire, again.
Direct
I
hire,
know
yeah.
Tracy's saying she's giving information, but it's one thing to have something on paper that we read on our own. It's another to stand up. And I think it would mean a lot to that person that's being hired too. You know, lifting them up, hey, this is who I've hired.
so. what-
Anyways, that's,
So what wording, I mean, I'm trying to figure out what wording you want, I mean.
yeah, I think adding back that line, the superintendent shall inform the board of any persons offered a contract or hire, or I guess however you want to say it, just maybe offered a contract under this, or not, it says this authority, I think it should mean his or her authority. I'm not sure, maybe education code, yeah, under this authority.
Should it perhaps, again, I don't like doing this, the superintendent shall inform the board of any persons offered employment above certain level.
Above campus level.
Would that make your job more difficult, Tracy?
No, not at all. And I've read many neighboring districts, and there is a local district that their board policy delegates the authority to the superintendent for anyone principal and below. And then anything above that, anything above a principal goes to the board.
Yeah.
So there's that option too.
I mean, if no one else feels that way, let's just move on, but that's just, I look at that and it just kind of,
But we probably gotta kinda take it as votes on it. I mean,
Sure.
that's what I said, I think if we can get language that can be made in the form of a motion, then we can do that like we should, that the motion's made
Right.
to modify this particular one.
Right.
If we're accepting the rest of it.
and I had one more under there too, I don't know if we want to add that or make that two separate motions.
Well, what's, under this
That-
one?
The exit interview, we scratched out the exit interview being conducted, I was unsure why we scratched that out.
That's, according to the policy analyst, basically that should be procedural things and not policy. So that should be handled in our procedural manual.
So if that was included in procedural manual, you okay?
Is it included in our procedural manual?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
You okay?
Yeah, as long as it's stated somewhere, I think, to make sure that happens.
Right, so
Okay.
are there other items in this group? Again, this is the first group, we've got more to work on that. next meeting. Are there any issues in this group that cause anyone any concern beyond what we've talked about? Right, then, Michael, if you're comfortable,
Sure.
if you make a motion with regard to the policies with specifying the amendment to this one policy, then we can see if there's seconds on it, and then we'll go from there.
Gotcha. Okay, let me write down. That was DC local. DC local. Tell me if I'm doing this wrong. I make a motion to approve revisions to DC local in addition to adding the line, the superintendent shall inform the board of any employees or any persons offered an employment, any persons offered employment under this authority.
Do you want to codify it with, at what level?
Sorry, thank you. Let's start over. Scratch that. I make a motion to approve DC local as stated with the addition of the line, the superintendent shall inform the board of any persons above campus personnel employment under this authority.
A motion by Mr. Strange,
Second.
a second by Ms. Moody. Is there further discussion on this item? Chair hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Okay. Are there any opposed? Chair hearing none, that motion passes unanimously. Make sure I didn't miss that. I got everybody an eye on that one, correct?
Was that specific to DC, or does that
That-
cover
that's-
all of them?
That's
This
this
is
one.
DC.
Now we're gonna come back and address, we've
Yeah, it's DC
modified that
local.
one. Now we need to come address or make a motion with regard to all the policies, if everybody's okay with them, with this one amended.
Yep.
So I'll entertain that motion.
I do see, Tracy, I see on BBB, on the first one, we talked about the election year, since it's already 2021 and that election's already happening, bumping that to 2030.
But you're taking action on it now. That was when we were gonna have the policies
Okay.
all come at the end of May.
Okay,
So she had to add it back in,
gotcha.
because the election's May 1st.
Does that clarify any questions, Mr. G?
Yeah, I did clarify it.
So again, all those, I'll entertain a motion with regard to approving item now, which is revision to local policy as presented with the amendment that has been voted on and approved by the board.
Make a motion to adopt revisions made to the local policies as presented,
With the amendment?
with the amendment to DC local.
Motion by Ms. Carruthers,
Second.
second by Mr. Strange. Is there further discussion on this item? The chair hears none. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? That motion passes unanimously.
And I'm sorry, who's second that?
Mr. Strange.
Strange, okay, thank you. Is that the right?
Okay, now we move on to 10. We just had all the discussion personnel.
And this is,
Mr. G,
yeah.
Mr. Go, keep doing.
we will still receive the
We'll
report.
keep informed. Good.
We have the resignations. We're at the night tonight where we do our
It just says from
probationary and term contract renewals. These are the recommendations from the principals to me and my recommendations to you. So,
And with that presentation and information, does any member here believe that we need to have executive session discussion on any new hire or extension contract or any other, actions with regard to those items? Because we can do that if we need to. The chair sees none. So then,
There's no action.
again, this was informational. We take no action. I don't want to move off it until y'all are ready, though. Everybody okay?
Mhm.
All right. Then we move on. There's, Ms. G, there's no matters concerning personnel needed in closed session? Am I missing something?
Gee,
Mr. G,
I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
do we need to take an action specifically with regard to each of those contracts? It's
Just
listed that way.
accept the
Okay.
superintendent's recommendations.
Okay, so,
I believe that's the motion, should be the motion.
well, the motions, the first motion is, if you look at new hires, there's no action required on new hires. That's in 10B. For 10C, it says the action sheet requires a motion to extend and issue probationary contracts to one individual for the 2021-22 school year.
Computer's jumping all around.
Because that's under current policy.
And that's
Okay.
an administrative probationary, that's the only one we have. It'll be your first year.
So why are we making a motion?
Because it's under the current policy, that's, again, we just changed the policy, but it won't be effective until we sign it all off.
Oh.
So we have to continue this format until we get the new policy in place.
So I move the acceptance of the administrative probationary contract.
Motion by Ms. Moody.
Second.
Is that you, Mr. Owens?
Yes, it is.
Second by Mr. Owens. Is there further discussion? Chair hears none. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Chair hears none. That motion passes unanimously. Then we move on to discuss and consider term contract renewals. Again, under old policy, we're required to at least extend those contracts. Any specific discussion on this item? If not, then I'll entertain a motion.
Make a motion to renew and issue term contracts for the upcoming 2021-2022 school year as presented.
Motion by Mrs. Carruthers.
second.
Is that you? And that was a second by Mr. Bisco. Is there further discussion? The chair hears none. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed? The chair hears none. That motion passes unanimously. And then we have one more. It's the action on the probationary contracts for the upcoming school year as presented. And there are a number of individuals within that list, I believe.
We did D already?
We
Yes.
did,
Yes, we just.
yes, we did C, D, we're on to E now.
Gotcha.
So this is E as to other probationary contracts that are not administrative. Is there any discussion needed on this item? And I'll entertain a motion.
I move to accept the probationary contracts to renew and issue for those individuals on the list.
Motion by Ms. Moody,
Second, Mr. Owens.
second by Mr. Owens, thank you. Any further discussion on this item? Chair hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Chair hears no opposition, that motion passes unanimously. So that completes 10, unless there are other matters for personnel that we need to address in closed session, Mr. G?
Nope.
No?
I
All right,
haven't heard any.
then we move on to item 11, the superintendent's report.
Okay.
Let me back up before we get off this, I jumped one. Did anyone on, any board member have anything with regard to policy issues in that group that we talked about, in board policies that we didn't bring up yet? If you do, would you please just send an email to Tracy or someone so that we can make sure we get that as we move to the next group? Okay, thank you. Mr. G, I'm sorry.
Oh, that's fine. And there will be other policy reviews as she has time to, but these were the ones that were specific to the board. That others will be for all our other areas, you know, A through G, all the way through the board policies. So she'll be sending those recommendations and changes.
All right.
Okay, so you all have the s'mores from the campuses and reports. Do you have anything you would like the principals to report out on or questions for them?
I do. How was Star?
That's what I was gonna ask. Start 2.0.
Punch him right in the mouth.
We didn't go till the 13th. Very good, very good. No, but, I mean, I say it in jest, but
It's no
seriously,
jest.
I mean, was the system up, down, in and around? It was,
Second time, it went very well.
We did make this, we have started making the switch to online testing.
Yes.
Using Chromebooks, the board is purchased. From our end, our infrastructure, from a technology standpoint, from the things that the board has purchased, we were ready to go. It was, on the other end,
Yes.
I think we had trouble one day. But I heard from the other principals, I know that all of our testing coordinators did an outstanding job. In their first year, really, with, I'd say 95% or above online testing, at least at the secondary level, so.
very good. Well, I think you should be commended because it didn't go as the state had planned, and you guys did a great job, so very good.
You can always ask those two right there.
Well, I got a response from one, I'll ask her.
The students did very well, being able to test on the Chromebooks, and it's a good year for them to
Yes, to practice.
get on.
And we didn't have, I didn't hear of anything, they complained because
Yeah.
it's Star. But as far as, my student was sent home and no one called me. My child was outside and I didn't hear of any of that. So that's why you're to be commended, because some people did have that, not in our district,
Right.
but
Yeah.
that way down 20, some people did have that problem. So, very good, very good.
I think Mr. Franklin and Ms. Boulding were stressing more than our principals were. So.
Very good.
You guys.
Yeah.
Do we know kids that did not show up for STAR? Do we know those numbers or percentages?
I know for my campus, we have 91 fourth graders and 7 did not come. We're down to 18 virtual, but we have them come on campus and 7 opted not to.
Out of 91.
That's not bad.
Mr. Strange, our largest cohort, I think, in the district is our freshman class, and they're in the 280s, I believe, right now. We only have 14 that have not tested at this point. We have 15 sophomores that have not tested with English 2. And we still have, with the window being open a little bit more,
Right.
we still have some time to make some phone calls and round them up. So all in all, we should have pretty good percentage.
Didn't you say with this we had 90% participation?
That would put us there in above 90% participation. Of course, we're usually closer to 100, but given the circumstance, I think we'll approach that 95% or higher. So.
Very good.
Yeah, just quick, I've been reading articles about, school districts around the country and all the things that teachers are going through. I just want to say to the teachers, administrators, principals, all of you guys that are taking care of these kids, thank you. It is one of those things that you guys, the last year has blown everybody away. And just the conduct that you've done for this district and for the students, I'm very appreciative of what you do because I have been told that I can't teach by my wife and my children. So it is a blessing to have a number of dedicated people that we have that do what you do, and just say thank you for making sure that the kids are ready, kids are prepared, and hopefully the kids are successful with what you do. So I just want to say thank you.
And I would like to extend on that and say that I am very thankful for staff that have been here all summer long doing the work that doesn't always get noticed, and putting together the plans and putting together the documents and the things that, taking care of payroll, and making sure that our employees and our teachers and our auxiliary staff are paid, even when they weren't up here, and these other guys were, and a lot of them are sitting in this room, and I applaud you all, so.
Junior high, I'm sorry, Did you,
Yeah, we had, we had about 88% that showed up, and we have a retake on, Tuesday, we come back.
okay, after spring break? But that's really good. I know that's a worry in a lot of the bigger districts, and I imagine the smaller district as well. It's just, you just don't know. You don't know who's gonna show up until they do.
Surprise, we're here.
Anybody else? Any other questions? All right, then I will move into my report, and I sent this to you, or Tracy had sent this to you for me ahead of time. I'll kind of go through it, and speaking on the Easter funds, there's a lot of talk about the CARES stimulus packages that have come out. So I'll kind of give you a summary of where we are with the Easter funding. State used the funds from Easter 1 to supplant state funding for school districts. There are two words that you'll become very familiar with: supplant and supplement. The government stimulus money was intended to supplement school districts and states with educational needs. The reality is the state took the money and they replaced the state's contribution to school districts with the federal monies. That's what you call supplanting. So we didn't receive any extra monies from the $5.5 billion that came out to school districts, to states and school districts the first time. We were scheduled to receive approximately $278,000 and $279,000, which was deducted from our foundation school program. Texas and New York are the only two states that have not released the Easter 2 and Easter 3 funding to their school districts. And there's the exact dollar amount varies depending on which projection you look at. One of them, I believe, was 1.9 on Easter 2, and I think we're 2.7 million on Easter 3. But that's all debatable depending on which group you look at. The longest string that is attached with this funding is the distinction that the federal government put on K through 12 maintenance of effort and higher ed maintenance of effort, which Texas wants to link together instead of separate because of the changes they made in House Bill 3. The K through 12 MOE would cover the higher ed. It won't if they keep it separated, and Texas would be charged an additional $1.2 billion to catch higher ed up. So Texas does not want to do that. So they have filed a waiver with the federal government in order not to have to meet the threshold for the higher ed. The legislature will not release the funds until they figure out the strings that are attached to accepting the money from the federal government. And the Texas legislators does not want to release funds to districts without oversight and restrictions from the legislative body. So, what hoops do they want us to jump through? House Bill 2021 by Chairman Bonin establishes this committee that they want to put in place that would decide how unspent federal monies or stimulus dollars would be allocated in the interim. This would all happen after this school year is over and after district budgets are adopted. So when you hear about all this federal stimulus money that we should be getting and how we're going to get all this extra money, we cannot factor that into our budget, and we're not planning on it. So many believe that Texas will choose to supplant again with the Easter 2 and 3 funds instead of supplementing like the federal government intended with the funding. We are planning our budget without Easter monies being considered for these reasons. And I gave you an article that you could read that basically discusses a lot of this same information. And then moving down for the 2021 school, are there any questions on the Easter funding and where we kind of stand right now?
Did they give any sort of a timeline on when they're going to make this decision?
No.
Not until the legislative session's over with. They keep getting pressured to answer those questions of when are they going to release the Easter money, and
Later.
crickets.
Later.
I think you can take as a cue that they agreed to fund fully based upon their past budget, and they don't have the money for it.
Yeah.
So my guess is, Mr. G's probably right, to fund fully, they're gonna take the money
They make
from
the
Easter, put it in state budgets, and pay us what they promised to pay the first time around, which is no additional money.
Yeah.
That would be my guess. There's Mr. Adams.
Reading today, the House Appropriations Committee passed out their budget, and it has a statement in there that they will not supplant, it will be all supplemental. Senate
Yeah, that's not, right, you gotta go through both.
And I would not expect to see anything from the Senate on that, so.
Maybe more charter schools.
And then any other questions or discussion on that? So moving to the next area, the 2021-22 school year. As I announced earlier, we are planning on doing full-day pre-K. We think that'll be a great benefit to our students. I believe Mrs. Pride is extremely excited about that. Tell me if I'm wrong. But, you know, we had the waiver that we originally did at the time because we were worried about space. We have found that we believe we have enough space and are going to be able to reconfigure our classrooms at Delaney to be able to fit this in. And be able to offer that 1 year sooner than we were going to. But I want to kind of get into our approach to next school year. Will be that we will be operating as normally as possible. You know, I believe it's time to get back to what we do and doing it the way we know is going to be effective for our students. And I had my faculty advisory group meeting yet Wednesday, and they were asking a lot of questions about virtual and what school's going to look like next year. And whenever I told them that we're going to be operating as normal as possible, they were very ecstatic about that. And I told them, I promised them, and I'm going to say it here live and in front of all of you, we will not operate virtually and in person the way we did this year again next year. So everybody heard that. So we will not be doing that. We had to do it this year to get through it, but that will not be happening again. So, all right. So moving on, we have created learning environments to accommodate students and families during the pandemic, but these environments' effectiveness are debatable. The governor's emergency declaration created a need for virtual instruction and the funding that was allocated for districts to offer it. If that order goes away, so could the funding allocated for it. There's currently legislative bills that are filed to address virtual learning, some to sit there and create a committee, others to sit there and keep it going in some form or fashion, but we have no guarantee that it will be funded next school year. Additionally, TA has invested millions of dollars, ESSER funding by the way, into developing the Texas Home Learning Network, originally intended to provide a resource to districts scrambling to offer remote learning opportunities. Many believe that this network is intended to provide a virtual alternative for parents in the future. This raises many questions on how this would work for ADA, accountability, records, et cetera, and whose students are they? Do they belong to the state? Do they belong to the school district? And how that would operate and function. We need to return to educating our students in the environment that we know is effective and allows us to meet the needs of our students, which is in-person learning. We've got to get back to building relationships with kids and families. We've got to get back to intervention, motivation, support, and accountability. Those are the crucial things that in-person learning brings into play that we need to have, and our students need it. Virtual learning was a learning environment that we offered, but it is not required for school districts to offer from our state. Many districts are already moving away from it and are no longer offering this learning option at all. There are concerns over the effectiveness and the lack of engagement by students, and concerns over the appropriateness for younger students and the teacher's ability to meet their needs, especially in the developmental ages. The plan for being open and in person is what we're looking for. So we had this discussion with our principals group on Wednesday morning. We're going to plan and hope for the best, and we're going to open like we should and need to, knowing that we have plans in place that we can always revert to if we need to. We've been there and done that. We've already put this stuff in place out of nowhere. As a lot of people say, we built the airplane while flying it, and we can always go back to things if things tighten up in next fall. But my recommendation is going to be that we move forward with school and doing school the way that we need to do it. So that's what I'm saying to you guys. Planning for potential growth in our district. So, y'all want to have any discussion on what I discussed with our plans for next school year?
I just want to make one comment on going back to in-person. I know that's obviously what's best for kids. I do want to say that I hope, and I think this will happen, is that the things that we have learned this last year digitally the practices that teachers have learned, things that kids have become accustomed, those strong practices, I hope those at least will continue, even though they're in person. I'm fearful, not necessarily for this district, but other districts where they'll just go right back to their lecture for 45 minutes and everyone sit and listen. I hope that's not the case. Sometimes when I hear we're gonna go back to normal, that's what kind of registers back in my mind, back to the way we used to do things. And although in person by far is the best, I hope at least those strong practices that we've had to kind of, like you said, build the plane as we flew it, those strong practices that have been effective in the classroom, I hope those things get to stay.
And our big push is engagement, engage the students, engage, and that's what we're looking for in our classrooms and from our teachers. We have a strong investment in Google Classroom. You know, I believe there's no doubt that we have a very strong investment in Google Classroom and using the same practices. You know, the genie's kind of out of the bottle now. You know, it's kind of hard to put that genie back into the bottle. You know, we know we can offer more blended learning and opportunities and how we do that. And so I believe it's going to be more important as we move forward of how we're engaging our students and what platforms we're doing that with. So I don't think that we're going to be reverting back to I guess, you know, what is it called, sit and get?
Right.
So, you know,
Right.
and
Just straight paper.
yeah. And I believe that our expectations, and this is where we have been working with our principals to become, you know, what do we say all the time? Instructional leaders, you know, being the instructional leaders for their campus. And, you know, it's one thing to manage the campus and do the day-to-day stuff, but being the instructional leaders on a day-to-day basis and driving that instruction is what we're working towards with them.
It's good to hear.
Okay. All right, and I'll move to my next topic. Planning for developments and potential growth. Currently, there are 9 developments, and if I calculate what could be coming, possibly anywhere from 11 to 12 developments that will have an impact on our district in the next 12 to 24 months. 5 in Patterson's attendance zone and 4 in Delaney's, excuse me, I have the hiccups. This will bring in approximately 889 to 1,000 housing units into the district. We need to ensure that we are ready for potential growth in the district, and we are currently looking at various scenarios with our campuses and projected capacities. We've looked at a lot of different scenarios, and you know, one of those was laid out at the last board meeting. These scenarios were presented to you. The research is, and more research is being done on the feasibility of certain scenarios. You know, we just got it, Mr. Ryan's just got another study the other day to see how some configurations with 6th grade bumping up to the junior high would look. To get input from him. We have the community steering committee that we've been using for the goals and beliefs and mission and vision. This needs to shift into a facilities and usage planning group for our community meetings. We need to get these meetings on a calendar and get them announced so that we can sit there and continue moving forward with our planning on how to address this potential growth in our district. I will say this, our numbers are down. So our attendance over the last 2 years has dropped. The COVID across the state, across the nation, most school districts are seeing declines in attendance. I don't think that's going to last for very long. And knowing how that's going to affect us in the future is going to be yet to be determined. So we're going to have to start making some plans to be ready for it. Okay. We need to get those, as I said, on the calendar, and need to find out from you guys whether you have a preference of making them board meetings or just community meetings, community input meetings. And so what would y'all like to do?
Community meetings.
Just community meetings?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's much easier to have discussions. I mean, you can't have discussions at board meetings, but.
The public needs to be engaged in the conversation about what
Yes.
we're doing. I mean, that's who's gonna raise an issue about, I don't wanna lose my identity, or I don't care to lose my identity with my local school. I mean, the Delaney and Patterson families are going to have to be involved in this to know if we're gonna make that change, it's gonna affect Ms. Clark's campus, it's gonna affect them. And I think we need to hear from them. And if they don't participate, we'll make the best decision we can. But I'd love to have families telling us we like, we don't like, we want something different. But
Yeah.
I agree with the opportunity to be heard should be required.
Yeah.
So I think we ought to have community involvement.
Yeah, the
That's
more,
how it should be a community meeting.
Okay.
You know, the more information we can get, the better, hopefully the better decisions we can make. Especially if we're talking about changing, you know, what students are going to which school. You'd like to know that if it's affecting parent's child or somebody in the communities, you know, you'd like to know what their opinion is of that. And at least have that information when we're getting ready to make these decisions. So I definitely want to continue the community meetings and hopefully even get more people or even students possibly to get into attendance so we have some type of feedback from them also.
And those have been operating as board meetings because of but I think we need to shift it to, as you're saying, just a community meeting and just encourage more people to come to it. So, and I will work with Robert Gadbois to sit there and facilitate the meetings. He's done that before, so.
Well, I think the public needs to be engaged, because the reality, if we do any sort of campus realignment with classes, different space, there's a cost. And you and I talked about, there's a discussion that districts might lose their fund balances. Legislature's talking about taking districts' fund balances.
Oh,
And so, how do you do a project if you have no fund balance? Not that you would build a building on fund balance, but we gotta pay attention to what the legislature's doing. There are always bills, but, you know, I've never heard that one before, that you take a district's fund balance. And so, I think parents need to be involved in it to say, we would support, you know, if it's partially fund balance to build the building or renovate, and maybe partially a bond, but you can't get a bond passed unless the public's engaged in it. So I think we need to have that conversation early.
So we would still be in compliance if we make it a community meeting, if we all show up? Because I thought that's what the reason that the strategic planning meetings were board meetings is because most if not all of us attended. So we can make it a community meeting, we can still come to all the meetings, and we don't have to, you don't have to stand and say this is official board meeting.
I mean, we could post it to be safe.
Okay.
And it'd just be safe, because unfortunately, somebody got sued for 2 board members
Yes.
talking. I still can't
Went to
figure that one
dinner.
out, but okay.
And that's why we've been doing the other
Right,
meetings
the other way.
as board meetings, just because you want the community there, but if you want to participate and, you know, just in the conversations, it might be better to make it a board meeting.
I just don't want it to be us and not anybody
Right.
else. The way we're doing it, open a meeting and have it wide open, that's fine. I think we can continue to do that. I was kind of concerned about, you know, how 2 board members have, unless they have some walking quorum I don't know about yet, but that was weird. So I'd be safe rather than not.
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
Okay. Everybody good?
Yep.
All right, my fourth one is district transfers, currently policy FDA, local. And you can read all that, but we have a lot of things in our policy. This is one of those ones that she questioned. We have all these different stipulations on how we address things. It's very specific to our district. But what I'm gonna say is that one thing that's not covered in here is open transfers. And is that something that in the past has not been allowed in our district? Is that something that we want to explore?
I would say if we can handle the students that we have without creating classroom environments, you know, I love our district where we can have 17-1, you know, and if we can continue with good numbers in classrooms and service the students that are resident in our district, I think having a transfer policy that we could use to fill in a space or 2 may not be a bad policy.
And I think we could have a selective transfer policy where you allow maybe 5 per grade level transfers in, and they have to meet criteria, you know, and something along those lines. But we would have to sit there and change policy. We'd have to get with our analysts to sit there and help us with that. But this is something that, you know, our administrators have broached. I know Mr. Cagle has brought it up at times of revisiting our transfer policy. Other districts around us allow transfers. You know, we have more and more charters starting to, you know, crowd in on us. We have one, as I've said, that's trying to open right across the highway from Kroger. Is this something we want to start looking at? If so, then we would have to sit there and change our policy to do that.
And we're talking about for the elementary school levels only?
Be all the way up, so.
And you were talking about, I'll make sure I understand correctly. When you say open transfer, You're talking about within the KISD, you're talking about with other districts?
For students from other districts coming to us,
Outside the boundary lines.
Like, an
outside of our boundaries.
someone living in Arlington could, on an open transfer, again, assuming we have space, is my caveat, could apply and come in and attend ninth grade here, or, high school here, or elementary.
But you can set parameters, like you can't, you can't be fail, you can't.
Attendance.
Attendance, you have all of those stuff. And I'll say that, we closed it and went from an open to closed back when Mr. Delaney was here, and, I was on the committee when we did it forever ago, and Delaney was packed. And so there were some reasons why, and, it's probably something that it's probably time to revisit with all the other stuff, but there were reasons then when we did it 18 years ago.
And I think that would be one of the things that could be put in there is that, we will have open enrollment for select numbers as long as space is available, and that's be determined by, how well we can address our students' needs first, before we open it up to other students. But there is the issue that we have lost some attendance over the last 2 years, and, COVID's kind of done a number. We don't know how those numbers are going to come back, but looking to the future, we may need to possibly open it up.
And, and I envision, just because of our space issues, the high school's gonna have the most opportunity to have increases in numbers. That would be my guess. But Alito does it, we can do it.
The other, is that gonna,
Godly does it.
is that gonna be a problem as far as our projected numbers of what we've got, the surveys from UTA? Is that gonna change our projected numbers as far as our future capacity?
The capacity is based upon the homes located within the zone, so I don't think it changes that capacity. It's gonna change that if you say, I could go to a whole new area and plug that in. You're talking about if we did it, Mansfield, Arlington, Forest Hill, Everman, Fort Worth, anybody wanted to travel, it's just a question of whether we have space for them or by adding students.
And you charge tuition also, so that's another factor. You can charge tuition.
I think it's worth looking at. I think it's worth discussing.
Yeah, I think to Mr. Visco's point, you just have to be real specific as to, let's say, for instance, we've got a default of 100 kids next year, and we fill that with the open enrollment. But then the next year, an extra 50 kids come in. What do we do with those 100 kids that were here this year? Do we tell them, sorry, 50 of you gotta go back to your school? Or if we keep them, now we're over 50. I think we just have to be very specific about what this looks like this year, but then also, let's say that capacity is filled the next year. What do you do with those kids that you've already allowed into your district?
And do you do capacity by grade level, or do you do capacity by school, or,
Right.
That's why I was saying, I think you look at the grade level and you say maybe so many slots per grade level, but then as you're looking at your numbers, that could change. It could be less kids, or it could be no kids, it gets shut off because your numbers are not.
I'd hate for a family to come to Kennedale, love it, of course, and then next year we say, you gotta go back, we had a few more kids show up.
And
Well, I would hate for the principals to have to accept.
Right.
And then say, how in the world did you end up at my school? So, I don't know if they
and I
had
will
that
say-
conversation, but this is not gonna sound right, but there's no other way to say it. Kennedale has a certain reputation, and we wanna keep that reputation. Yes, you wanna, we have to have all kind of parameters for open enrollment, but then you have to look at, are we gonna do a lottery system?
How do you choose?
How are we gonna pick first come, first serve? I know this person, so I'm at the top of the list. I didn't know anybody, so now my child really would be an asset to the district, but because I didn't know anybody, then I ended up at the bottom of the list. I just think that you're opening up.
Siblings, yeah.
Yes, oh goodness, so you have a family of 5, one of them is accepted, what happens to the other 4? Well, you can't drive to one district for 4 kids and come to Kennedale, so your high school student can participate in
Extracurricular activities?
extracurricular activities because they want to
And
But
don't-
the-
do whatever.
Some of
No,
the
I
reality is
think
right now,
we
we
need
already
to be
have
careful.
students who don't live in our attendance zone that are already coming here, you know?
We do.
Quite a few, and that's already a reality of the
And I
situation.
This-
think
but we
more
didn't invite
districts
them.
do it than
This
you.
is
Sorry?
an
Now you're
invitation,
putting
and I
me in
think
false.
that,
I can't hear.
Go ahead.
we didn't invite them. This is an open invitation. If we
Yeah.
consider this, and well, we'll just be inviting,
Well, again, I think the issue is, do we have the conversation?
yes.
Yes.
Leslie?
Well,
Leslie?
I was gonna say, I think you have the conversation, but we're not the first one to do this. I mean, nearly every district around us is doing this, so it can be done and you can set the parameters and discuss it and make it done, but lots of our 4A friends do it and lots of the people around us are all doing it,
You know,
so.
and as a competitive district, you're gonna run into the competition not only between the district, but you're gonna have competition between the students. You know, especially that top 10% that's wanting to be in that top 10%, and you bumping another kid in there that bumps me out of the top 10, I'm gonna be upset.
And we address that because they have to have been in the district by a certain point to be in that top slot. So, you know, somebody who's looking to move in from, I think we had that, my
Yeah,
first
but
year
like
here, we had
two
tried to have
months.
somebody from Martin move in. It was, you know,
Yeah.
Well,
and they thought they were gonna move in and be like just in, no, because you have to be in the district. Our guidelines, I think, take care of.
We could have a whole nother meeting on
Yeah,
Yeah,
I'm just starting conversation, so, you know, these are all
You
conversation
started it,
starters.
now let's move on.
Yeah, I think that's something we need to all think about and address it at another meeting.
Well, we've got a long way to go to get there, so yes, go ahead.
All right, that's it.
All right. Then, any board member comments, issues? Well, I have two. One, I want to compliment the board. You know, it's about to change. We're going to lose Leslie, we're going to lose Michael. Both of you have been a tremendous service to our district. You both brought things that helped our board and helped our district, and I hate to see you go. I know you've served a long time, Leslie, and Michael, I know you've got your hands full with everything you're doing. But I wanted tonight to be an example of what our board will be. You notice we're moving to where we take care of those, I call them mundane things, get them in, get them done, and have the time to focus on the important discussions. Have the time where we can focus, where we spend our days talking about student achievement. You know, we spend time talking about policy issues. That's the slot where we'll now start talking about dashboards and student achievement, where our principals and teachers can come before us and say, here's where we're excelling, here's what it shows, here's where we're struggling, and here's what it shows, and we can now get that information that we've not really had readily available to us. But it requires us to work, it requires us to focus on that. And I do think you guys have been very good about helping us move toward that goal and that process in a meeting. And I appreciate all of you doing that. I will miss you, Michael, I'll miss you, Leslie. You're good people.
Thank you, John.
Anything else?
Just for me, as one of the new people, thank you for sharing the time and space and your knowledge, making me feel at ease that, you know, being a part of this board. I'm gonna miss all the questions. I'll probably be.
I can still come to public comment, don't.
Oh, yeah.
That much?
Well,
Not a big deal. I can come in and
we
say what I need
vote to
and get out of
ban
here.
him at any? But yeah, it's like I said, it's one of those things that we need that. We need people asking questions. We shouldn't, as a board, just blindly go for no reason. And sometimes, like, I'm one of those that asks a lot of questions too, so I know how annoying I can be. And you know, Leslie, I know how you've, you know, steadfastly done the secretary title for, and how you got me on this, I don't know. But thank you for your service and for your input. I think we are a much better district and definitely a better board because of you guys.
Thank you.
Mr. Bisco said as a new member of the board, I am speaking as an even newer member of the board. I want to say thank you again for the time and all the effort you put in, because as Ms. Moody so eloquently said, Kennedale does have a reputation, but we got the reputation because of the representation that you all served on the board and helped to create. So thank you. You will be missed, and I look forward to seeing all of you in the open session. the open comment session.
Get back to you,
Anything else? All right. Then we have completed the agenda for tonight. If there are no other issues,
To have board discussion, we do need to think about, I would just say we have the May 6th public committee meeting at the junior high at 6:30. We have to canvass the election on the 11th, before the 12th, so we have to have a meeting on the 11th. I thought we would have one at 6 o'clock to canvass the election. That should be over by about 6:30, and then at 6:30, we can do the training for the new orientation that's required.
that would work for you?
Yes, you went through those dates real quick.
Sorry,
You
go back
said-
over the
Yes.
dates.
Okay, so May 6th is the next community meeting.
Right.
At the junior high. It starts at 6:30. May 11th, we have to canvass the elections. If we start that at 6, and I think it usually takes about 30 minutes or so, doesn't take real long, swearing in of the new people, and then we adjourn that meeting and go into another special meeting where we go into the training, which would be the new board member orientation for everyone. And if we have it as a board meeting, then you can participate and everybody can participate. You don't have to if you don't want to. but-
However you want to do it, I'll
Yeah.
be happy to help.
Okay. And then we will have the regular board meeting on the 20th of May.
Those dates okay with everybody so far as you can tell?
Yep, and don't forget, the election is the
Early voting is April 19th.
Yeah, April
Starts April 19th, and the election is Saturday, May 1st.
May 1st.
Coming up, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yep. All right,
Everybody good?
good.
Tracy, that cover everything?
At the summer leadership, if you plan on attending, they are doing a lottery this year, so I'm not able to sign everyone up like we did the year past. I'm gonna put the district in as a lottery on April 28th, and then they'll draw the names of the districts that get to attend in person in San Antonio. If anyone wants to attend the virtual in Fort Worth, I can just email me and I can sign you up.
Either way y'all want to do it.
Well, I think, did we vote to go with San Antonio?
We did.
Then, so,
Yes.
But we may
but if we
not,
don't do the Lido, so,
we may not get to go.
right, so, either way, I'm good.
Depends how lucky we are as a district.
We're lucky.
Either way, no matter
We win at everything.
All right. Thank you, principals, staff, everyone being here. We appreciate your attendance.
Double.
All
All right,
We are adjourned at, what time is it? Where's the clock?
I've got 8:58.
8:50.